Rowley Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Spooky Stories is a collection of 14 short stories written by Rowley. Most of them involve famous monsters like zombies or Frankenstein. Since Rowley is so awesome and friendly, most of the stories have a happy ending. I like that. If Greg was writing scary stories, they would all end with everybody died, which is not as fun. Argo Font Book Review, Argo Font Book Review. The first story is The Changing, where Rowan finds a hair in his armpit. He soon gets hair all over his body, and he wonders if he's going through puberty. It turns out he's a werewolf. There's an inspiring ending, where the werewolf family decides to stop hiding their true selves out of fear of ignorant people. Next is The Prankster, which I think is a play on the Goosebumps book series. Goosebumps loves to have fake-out scare pranks and big plot twists. This story has both. Jasper's the town prankster. One day, people can't see him. At first, Jasper uses this as an excuse to pull pranks, but he slowly realizes nobody can see him because he's dead. At his funeral, there are a bunch of big plot twists in a row. Plot twist, Jasper's still alive, the ghost thing was a prank. Plot twist, the ghost thing was real, everyone was dead all along. Plot twist, the ghost thing is another prank. Only Jasper just died trying to fly off a lighthouse. Next story is Ghost Friend, which is clearly a story about Greg and Rowley, with the names changed. Greg is a ghost, and he spends all his time annoying his responsible friend for no reason. Greg stops Rowley from studying, and he ruins Rowley's social life. I'm not sure why I like this story so much, when I hated the very similar story of Greg interrupting Rowley's study time in the first Awesome Friendly Kid book. I think the story works better here, because Rowley is technically talking about a fictional boy named Gabe, not Greg. So Rowley is more honest and freer when it comes to expressing his negative feelings towards the disruptive friend. Next is The Biter. A little girl likes to bite things, which causes a lot of problems for her parents, until they realize she's a vampire. The school is great about accommodating her, and she becomes so popular that when the parents learn she's not a vampire after all, they decide to keep it a secret. The Human Head is an origin story for the Headless Horseman. In middle school, he was a normal person named Gunther without a head. He becomes best friends with Anders, who is a normal person without a body. They pretend to be one person in order to impress a girl they like. This is such a weird story, but it works well. Gunther turns evil when she grows up to marry Anders. In The Scanner, everyone turns into skeletons, which ends up being pretty fun and useful, although it's a little confusing because everybody uses the same skeleton emoji. When everybody turns back to normal, they find themselves naked in the snow. My favorite story is probably The Cellar. Rafe lives in the Middle Ages, long before computers and cell phones. He keeps hearing weird noises from the basement. When Rafe grows up, his parents tell him, surprise, the basement is their computer room. They just pretended to live 1,000 years ago, because they don't think computers are good for kids. Sheltering Rafe all his life ends up being a bad idea, because the instant he gets a cell phone, he becomes obsessed with it and never cares about anything else. That's the same thing which happened when my kid first played Minecraft. I didn't quite understand the point of The Nap, which is about an old woman. She takes a nap, and her cruel relatives mistakenly think she's dead. They bury her alive, but she easily escapes and makes friends with her young niece. I feel like this story could be a metaphor for something, but I'm not sure what. In The Stain, Robbie accidentally drops his father's ice cream cone. He lies about it, and he's cursed with a stain on his shirt that gets bigger and bigger until he tells the truth. I remember something similar happening to Pinocchio. Also Lady Macbeth, but I don't think Rowley has read Macbeth. A Mummy is another story I didn't quite understand. The characters are drawn like Greg and Rowley, but they act differently. Mech is a mummy whose popularity is usurped by a younger, cooler mummy named Kaba. Kaba becomes a big celebrity, and he sues Mech for copyright infringement. Things go badly for both of them. They lose all their money, and they become roommates. No joke, I would probably watch that TV show. Next is a science project, which is about Victor Frankenstein. Only he's a nerd in middle school who creates a Frankenstein monster to win a science fair. Victor treats this monster like a dog. When Victor dies, the monster brings him back to life as a literal dog. Victor and Frankenstein look like Greg and Rowley, and again, I don't know why. The Medicine Cabinet is another scary story which could have been a Goosebumps book. Ryan's parents tell him to never use their medicine cabinet. He ignores their warning, and he unknowingly covers his head with age-reversing makeup. His head gets smaller and younger until he has a baby head. Meanwhile, his parents become super old without their makeup. They confess they're secretly over 110 years old, but even though everyone's ages are all mixed up, the family is happy. I thought the invasion was interesting. A town wonders how to survive a zombie attack. They decide to be awesome and friendly. They treat the zombies like friends, which works great. They become a successful half-zombie, half-human town. When aliens from outer space attack, they decide to try the same kindness strategy. It doesn't work. The aliens kill them all immediately. That's a pretty grim ending. I wonder if Greg wrote that one. Last is The Demon, which is a real-life story about Rowley and Greg. Greg gets mad when Rowley doesn't want to watch a scary movie about demonic possession. Greg pretends he's possessed, and he makes a huge mess. Rowley thinks it's real, so he tries to splash Greg with holy water, only he doesn't have holy water, so he attacks Greg with toilet water. It's pretty hilarious, and Rowley's dad kicks Greg out of the house after that. The end. Post-book follow-up. I thought this book was okay. I liked the stories, which felt like stories taken from Goosebumps books. I also enjoyed the ones with famous monsters like the Headless Horseman. I did like Ghost Friend and the Demon, which were both about Greg and Rowley, but I was confused by a mummy and the science fair, which look like they're about Greg and Rowley, but I don't understand how they could be about them. Many of the stories could be better and funnier, like a little faster pacing and more scares, obviously. I felt myself wishing this book had commentary from Rowley and Greg like the last one did. Maybe there could have been an overall story, like Greg and Rowley are competing to win a scary story contest, sort of like how they both wanted to be the school cartoonist in the first Wimpy Kid book. Unless I'm wrong, people on the internet like this book the most out of all three awesome Friendly Kid books. I liked book 2 the most, but I think this one is still good. Book 1 is the only book in this series that I dislike. As I'm recording this, it's been 2 years since this book came out, and there's no news of a sequel anytime soon. I do hope there's another Rowley book someday. I give Rowley Jefferson's awesome, friendly, spooky stories an 8 out of 10.